So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, welcome everybody to Kent with Bent number 69. Nice. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, Kent with Bent is the show where we take a look at stupid things Kent. Oh, my goodness, we're gonna drink from Mothra already? Well, in case you guys didn't know, we have a few random drink triggers here that involve when various sounds like Mothra or Godzilla come by. We'll describe that in further details, but if you have been playing along with us for a while, now is in fact the time to drink. So now you know. Let's see. Like I was saying, this is the show where we make fun of Kent Hovind's silly things that he says, and we drink during it, and we have some drinking rules. So, Ben, I think we should probably go over the drinking rules. What do you think?
I'm thinking of the streets where they ain't got no rules.
Yeah, that's the streets.
Yeah.
We got rules.
Yeah, these are fun drinking rules. These are drink responsibly rules.
Yes.
These are I don't drink any alcohol in my rules, but you do you. Safely. Yeah.
All right, so what are some of the rules, though?
Well, we mentioned the Godzilla sound or Mothra or any kaiju monster. That's one rule. Do you want me to tell you all the rules?
No,
I have a list.
Well, let's go one more, and then I'll actually.
I'll tell you one of my favorite rules is when someone makes a prediction.
Yes.
And gets it right.
Yeah, that is always a fun one.
That's one of my favorite rules. That's one of my top, 7 rules.
So we also drink, like I said, for Godzilla or Mothra or any other Toho kaiju that might come along. Now, there's two main ways that can be triggered. Sorry, a little cough there. One is that I have a few notification types on my phone that just are Mothra and Godzilla. Another big one, though, is that if you're a channel member, you have access to the channel emojis. 3 of them are, in fact, kaiju emojis. And if you super chat any of them, we'll take a drink for it. So if you are going to super chat and you're a member, you might as well just tap one on at the end. Just because. Let's see. We also drink whenever Kent Hovind says something that's just so stupid we kind of have to, which is not everything he says, but it's a lot of what he says. We also take a drink whenever Kent Hovind gets something right without just quoting someone. We'll also take a drink for whenever Kent Hovind tells a story that didn't happen, or pretends that his shower thought conversations are real conversations, which is the same thing, basically. And also, I've just decided, I think 3 or 4 days ago, that I'm going to say that whenever Kent Hovind mentions the National Socialist German Workers' Party or anyone associated primarily with it, we're going to drink for that too. Because he does that a lot.
With usually no transition.
Yeah, it's just straight.
He'll just say something and then the very next sentence will be like, okay, that's where you went, Godwin's Law.
Yep. Kent is a big fan of Godwin's Law. All right, I think that covers it. I think we're ready to get going.
I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, here we go. Oh, and that reminds me, by the way, if anyone is a channel member and does not have access to the Discord, please let me know, and I will remedy that as soon as I can, which will probably be after the show. Here we go.
What do they do about it? Ignore it. They don't have an answer.
Oh, he's talking about why the sun has not nearly the majority of the angular momentum in the solar system, despite having the vast majority of the mass. And no, it's not that they're ignoring it, Kent. It's that people are looking into it, and there isn't currently a great explanation.
I asked the professor on the plane, I said, sir, if everything began from a swirling dot, Big Bang, why do 2 planets, and possibly Pluto would be number 3, rotate backwards?
All right, so we're going to take a drink for that being stupid and for a conversation that didn't happen. Because this whole hypothetical conversation on an airplane just didn't happen. The details change. They're ridiculous. No, so we're taking 2 drinks for me.
I don't think there's only so many flights that have happened, right?
I
can't
suppose.
believe all of these flight stories could possibly be true.
Oh, I think they're supposed to be the same flight story. I think he has this one story about how one time he was on a plane with a Berkeley professor for some reason.
And I think in his head that story is part of the flood.
Maybe.
Just way in the future. I don't know.
And Brainbug loves Mothra. Of course she does. Mothra is great, and also a bug.
I don't know if it's ever been demonstrated or not if Pluto rotates backwards to the rest. Okay.
I don't think it does. I don't really know.
All the planets are
Doesn't
going the
matter.
same direction around the
No.
sun, but some of them are spinning backwards.
So actually, you can't really say that Uranus is spinning backwards because it's basically 90 degrees, which means that it's... You can't really define whether it's retrograde or prograde at that extreme angle. But Venus does spin backwards.
Why?
Oh, this is easy. You see, while you can maintain a set amount of, momentum in terms of angular momentum in a system, parts of that system can actually start to spin the opposite way if other parts actually gain additional angular momentum to make up for it. And one of the things that this can cause is when two bodies, both of which are orbiting prograde, or, in the normal direction that things will orbit in this system, but one ends up actually approaching the other one before it in its orbit, which can happen as a result of various orbital configurations that we don't super want to get into right now because it's a little complicated. But if those two things then collide, one of them will actually see the other one as coming in relative to it retrograde, even though relative to the center of mass of the whole system, they're both actually orbiting prograde. And if the colliding body carries enough relative to the body we're talking about, retrograde energy, it can actually make it spin slowly in a retrograde direction, while then itself will have to have imparted to it significant additional prograde angular momentum, but that's fine. And then suddenly, oh look, you've got a backwards rotating Venus. I mean, that's really all it takes. Similarly, you can have things like some of the moons orbit retrograde because they actually encountered, say, Jupiter, which is a planet that has retrograde moons, ahead of it in its orbit, and then as a result of interactions with other moons in Jupiter, in Jupiter's orbit, it ended up capturing around Jupiter, but in a retrograde orbit, even though it was always in a prograde orbit of the sun. It's really not that complicated. I mean, it is in terms of like, oh, show me the math, like, that would take forever. But like, if you have even like the most rudimentary grasp on how orbits work, this really isn't, I was gonna say it really isn't rocket science, but I guess it kind of is, so never mind.
And their answer is, oh, they got hit by something. I say that's
Yeah.
not possible.
Why not?
Not if the Big Bang Theory is true.
Why?
What would hit them?
Something. What? I'm taking a drink. Another body.
Another object.
Yeah.
Is Kent implying it's impossible for anything in space to collide with anything else? Because it should all be moving outwards because of the Big Bang.
I think he does not realize that two objects can both orbit prograde, but one can encounter the other at a close encounter, going retrograde relative to one of the bodies because of their relative orbital velocities to each other. I think that's what it is. I think he doesn't realize that you can have an encounter where one thing is actually at a lower speed relative to the center of mass than the first one. Therefore, from its perspective, it's going retrograde. Kerry Bronson for $5 says, the void offers no friction. Any path you begin down, you will continue down until another force intervenes. It is inevitable. Thank you very much, Kerry Bronson. And of course, the void accepts your donation, because the void accepts donations, generally speaking.
The longer you wait, the farther apart they're going to get.
Not the planets, Kent!
I was right. You gave him too much credit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you were
He
right.
thinks everything is moving apart because it all started close together in the Big Bang.
Holy crap.
And so nothing in space can collide with anything else.
This is another thing where he's conflating the nebular hypothesis and the Big Bang Theory.
And forgetting that, what was that thing called? The thing
The
that affects how basically anything travels through space-time? What is it?
Craftity.
Garfmany.
Oh wait, no, it's...
Garfield.
I think it's
Garfield.
gravity.
One of us might be right. I don't know which one.
I think it's me. I think it might be that
I
he
like
forgot
it.
about gravity.
You forgot about gravity. Oops.
Goodness, Kent, that is... I wasn't expecting it to be this dumb this soon. I'll just say that.
Good job, Kent.
Also,
Nice.
8 of the 91 known moons. I believe now there might be over 100 moons that have been discovered. I don't know.
Sure,
But
who
according to
cares?
Walt Brown's website, creationscience.com, by the way, a great website.
Wow.
Yeah, because Walt Brown is who you should be getting your astronomy factoids from, Kent. Whatever.
What did you say? Creationscience.com or something?
I think so, yeah. And look, it doesn't actually matter what numbers Walt Brown gives. Like, any numbers he's going to give are going to be close enough that I'm not going to contest them because it doesn't really matter. But, like, maybe check NASA. I don't know.
Got to check. Walt Brown was a physics professor for the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. He has a PhD in physics.
Sure,
He's
maybe,
a
I don't
Christian,
know.
travels and speaks on creation. Has a great book out that we sell, In the Beginning, by Walt Brown, the book we sell in our library. Powerful book. I disagree with Walt on a couple of key things, okay? But I've learned to eat the meat and spit out the bones years ago. If you don't learn that, you will choke on something, okay? But
Oh, that was a
Don't
joke
laugh.
that didn't laugh. That didn't land. Yep, I forgot about that. We take a drink for jokes that didn't land. My apologies for not explaining that rule, everybody.
You say so. I hear
he's
all
the
the
one that
jokes
said 8 of
always.
the 91 known moons spin backwards, and I
Oh,
believe
so
now
you-
there are maybe over 100 moons. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't.
creationscience.com. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Great guy. He's all military. I mean, he's a retired Air Force colonel, okay? And it's, he's all military when you talk to him, just kind of doesn't know how to lighten up a little bit. But down under the tough skin, like the guy on the TV program, Gunny,
Is this a joke?
really a
What's
person.
happening right now?
But
He's
Saturn,
talking to his
Jupiter,
audience
and
of
Neptune
one,
are
I
very
think.
interesting planets.
Okay.
They all have quite a few moons going around them, but they have moons, think about it, going both directions.
Yeah.
How could a Big Bang produce a planet with moons going opposite directions?
See episode 68
And how
for the
long-
answer to that, Kent. Because we explained it.
Do I
well,
actually-
Dapper explained it like 9 times.
Do I actually have to draw this, like, to explain this? Because I feel like that's all that's left to me now is to
It's just
actually
the same
draw it.
question over. It's the same question over and over. I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
you can
But,
keep
like,
addressing it again and again if you want.
I feel like now I need like an actual thing. So give me
All
a
right,
second,
Kent.
everybody.
Let's start like I don't know, a GoFundMe or something to buy a Kerbal Space Program for Kent, and then somehow we'll make him play it so we can learn how things like orbital mechanics work and gravity and
Right.
in an
Okay.
intuitive way.
So guys, here's what I'm gonna do. Right. I'm gonna get a little paintbrush tool over here. Okay. So now let's say we have a very simple system, right? So we've got a little sun here. We got some stuff here. Doop. Right. So this is going. All this is going this way. Right. Now you have another object that it's going to go like this, right? And they're here. Now, because these orbits overlap a little bit, eventually they're gonna connect. And when that happens, if they connect in the right speeds, what you'll have happen is you'll have one planet here, and it's orbiting this way, and the other planet or moon or whatever is also orbiting this way, but it's going this way just a little bit relative to this guy. So when you cancel out when you add up all these motions with vector math, what you're left with is just a little bit of motion this way, which is effectively retrograde. So now let's say this guy is small and this guy is Jupiter, right? So Jupiter has a few moons. There's a moon here, circling. These are not very good circles. Whatever. Doesn't matter. There's another one here. Okay. So this little object is coming in, and it's going this way ever so slowly, but then it starts to be attracted by the gravity of Jupiter. Oh, look. Oh, sorry, wrong way. This way. Yeah. So it's going over here. My bad. Oh, and it's being attracted by the gravity of Jupiter. These guys are orbiting this way. This thing is going this way. Oh, all right. Well, it's going... Oh, and look, it gets even more attracted this way. And now it comes around. Oh, it can't escape. Oh, it gets attracted by this moon. And, oh, look, it's in retrograde orbit. That's all that has to happen. It's actually not that crazy. I can draw the exact encounter. Like, not exact encounter, but I can draw, like, the basic idea of this encounter where you have things that start off, everybody's going prograde, and, oh, you get a retrograde moon. Like, really, it's not the craziest thing in the world. I don't understand why it is that Kent seems to think that this is just impossible. But, I mean, there you have it. So,
Well, I can quote an old episode of Family Guy. It's a real short quote. Christians don't believe in gravity. It used to be a ridiculous quote, but it seems like it might be becoming more and more true for some people that are Christian. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a Christian. I believe in gravity, but Kent doesn't seem to, and I don't get it.
maybe we can say some Christians don't believe in gravity. Most, I think, do.
It was I mean, you know that show. It's so absurd, right?
Right.
Well,
Oh,
it applies here.
what I was drawing is a very, very, very basic orbital diagrams that are just there to get the basic concepts through, and not to scale or anything like that, Ryan. All right, here we go. Let's get some more Kent in.
Could moons going the opposite directions survive?
Yes.
Isn't
they
there
would
some
die.
kind
I
of
don't know what that
probability
means.
that they would eventually, hit each other?
Yes, there is. And that is the kind of thing that happens.
I thought that was impossible, Kent, because everything's moving outwards.
So there's a few options, right? One is that, yes, in fact, you don't end up capturing into a terribly stable orbit, and then you end up colliding with something. It's actually possible that Saturn's rings, as they are now, might actually be the result of such a collision. Some icy body might have captured in a retrograde orbit, smashed into something else that was going prograde, and now we have some rings. Now, is that for sure what happened? No, we're not sure. There's a bunch of hypotheses about how Saturn's rings got there. No one knows for sure. So, but another thing that can happen is if the retrograde moon falls into what's called a resonant orbit. So, for instance, if it is in a whole number ratio of orbits with its nearest neighbors, so maybe it orbits once for every 2 orbits of the moon inner to it, and twice for every 3 orbits of the moon next out, those are actually stabilizing orbits. And over time, they become very stable. And it takes a very long time for anything to disturb them. In fact, usually, a new significant source of gravity has to enter the system in order to disrupt an orbit like that. In fact, many planets are in resonances with various things. For instance, or even planets are just in resonant orbit with the sun and their rotation. So, for instance, Mercury rotates 3 times for every 2 orbits. That's another one of these resonances. They become very stable. The moon is in a 1-to-1 resonance with its rotation with Earth. It orbits once for every rotation. Exactly. So these are the kinds of things that can help stabilize gravitationally bound systems, resonance orbits, things like that. So it's actually entirely possible for a system to persist essentially indefinitely with both retrograde and prograde orbits, provided that they are in a stable condition, which, surprise, surprise, the ones in the solar system are stable, hence have persisted. Because if they weren't stable, we probably wouldn't be observing them now, because they probably already would have decayed away, which has already almost certainly happened. Now here's an example of a system that's not stable in the long term. Phobos and Deimos, the moons of Mars. Those things are going to collide with Mars in a few million years. And by a few, I mean like 500 million years or something, right? Like, it's not going to happen in like 2 million years, but yeah. Anyway.
Is a system like that possible for billions of years, or is there
Yes.
some kind of shorter time limit to this?
No.
I don't know that
Why would
anybody's
there
ever
be a
studied the
shorter time
probability of
limit?
the planets or the planets' moons hitting each other. I know they're slightly different orbits, etc.
Of course we have. I'm going to take a drink because it's so obvious that we've done this. Okay, look. Here's the thing. While 3 body or an n-body problems in gravity are extremely difficult, there are ways to solve them. Most of them involve brute force, just moment-to-moment calculating the net forces on all the objects in the system, which is really annoying, but we have computers who can simulate this, and I mentioned it last time. Okay, Universe Sandbox, please sponsor me, because I'm about to plug you again. Universe Sandbox is a computer simulation that will simulate n-body gravity, which means any number of bodies all exerting gravity on each other, and it does it the brute force method, where it just takes time steps and calculates the net force on each body at each time step to then calculate where it's going to be in the next time step, and it goes on and on. But yeah, you can rewind the solar system as far back as you want or as far forward as you want and watch just how stable these orbits are. And it turns out they are stable for billions of years. It's already been done. That work is done. And it's so easy to do now with modern computing that you can do it for yourself on your own computer by just buying a game on Steam. That's how easy it is. It's on
Simulation
Steam.
game, but it is on Steam.
Yeah. Also, Valve, if you want to sponsor me, go ahead. No one's going to sponsor me.
But to me, it looked like this would be an indication that it cannot be billions of years old. But anyway, the fact is 3 planets have moons orbiting both directions.
Okay.
The sun is 98% hydrogen or helium.
Which is what we would expect of, the Big Bang.
The inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, are less than 1% hydrogen or helium.
Yep.
If it came from a Big Bang, don't you think there ought to be a little better consistency of what the things are formed of?
What?
Why are the...
Okay, this again is him thinking that the solar system is a direct result of the Big Bang. But no. The Big Bang and the nebular hypothesis actually don't stand on, don't rely on each other, right? So the nebular hypothesis just starts with there being a cloud of mostly hydrogen and helium, but also traces of heavier elements like iron and nickel. And I was about to start listing off more, and I realized no one actually wants to hear me sit here and name elements that are heavier than helium. So
why not?
I don't. Do you?
Kind of.
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
Like
it
lithium, boron, argon.
Lithium is heavier than helium and hydrogen.
Barely, but it is.
Barely.
Anyway, so the Big Bang could, or some other thing, like there could be some version of a steady state universe. It could have just been God just creating galaxies in situ with gas clouds. Doesn't matter. None of this affects the nebular hypothesis. How this universe as a whole got here doesn't tell you much about how the solar system got here. It's kind of like saying, oh, if you don't know how Earth formed, then you can't tell me how the sandstone formed. No, I don't have to know how the Earth formed in the first place to tell you about the weathering of upstream sediments and then their deposition by a stream and then their later lithification as they cement together. Like, not required. Similarly, I don't have to tell you about, like Henry Ford in order to tell you how my car operates. It doesn't matter. Right? So, but again, the way this works is, okay, so you have a cloud that is primarily helium and hydrogen. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff, too. Now, all of it's going to start to infall because this cloud is presumably starting out quite cold. So, as it starts to infall towards the local center of mass, there's going to be a few things. One is there's going to be an accretion disk because, as it turns out, gravitational interactions over time tend to flatten out gravitationally bound systems. It's simply a result of just the law of averages. Generally speaking, you're going to be deflected more towards the overall, to having an orbit that's closer to being in line with the overall axis of rotation of the entire system than having interactions push you away from that. So over time, on average, it just tends to flatten out. Now we have what's called an accretion disk, right? But you still have things that are falling in. Now, even the heavy elements are going to fall in. In fact, they're going to fall in more strongly than the lighter elements, which explains in part why the inner planets have higher amounts or higher proportions of heavier elements, right? But still, a lot of hydrogen and helium is going to fall towards the center because that's almost all of what it's made of. But once the star actually gets big enough and hot enough that it can initiate fusion, what starts up is what's called stellar wind. And the stellar wind is a stream of high energy particles, including gamma rays, X-rays, alpha particles, electrons, naked protons, that's just blasting out from the sun. And this wind is actually sufficient to push hydrogen and helium out from the solar system, the inner solar system. And only by the time you get to places like Jupiter is it weak enough that hydrogen and helium tend to actually have the force of gravity from the sun dominate over the wind. And so they can collect in planets like Saturn and Jupiter. So no, none of this is inconsistent with the nebular hypothesis, and it's completely independent of the Big Bang. And I'm going to just take a drink for once again conflating the Big Bang and the nebular hypothesis.
Inner planets so different from the sun.
It's just because they got stripped of their hydrogen and helium, basically. The whole inner solar system got stripped of that stuff. So what was left was stuff like silicon and iron and carbon.
And so different from each other. All 9 planets are very different. I mean, very different.
I mean, not really. Venus and Earth are actually very similar in size and composition. Mars is actually also pretty similar in composition. Mercury, sorry, has a much higher proportion of very heavy things, including iron. And you can kind of see how it's basically a density gradient as you go from the innermost planet out. Yeah, there's probably a reason for that. And it's, what was that word we were trying to think of before?
Garfield,
I still think it might be gravity.
maybe.
Yeah.
Some are just gas.
If
some
that's
are solid.
even real.
My daughter bought her first.
It's not really true that the gas giants are just gas. They almost certainly have a solid core, and they're probably surrounded by a liquid mantle. So, for instance, Jupiter almost certainly has a mantle of liquid metallic hydrogen, which is pretty cool, by the way. So, you don't normally think of hydrogen as metal, but if hydrogen is under sufficient pressure, it will turn into a liquid. And in the characteristic, factor of how metals work, the electrons will start to flow between the nuclei. So it'll just be a soup of, protons and proton-neutron pairs with electrons just flowing around between them, which is what metal is. So, yeah.
Car from a guy. I spoke at a church in Connecticut, and he drove me around while I was speaking at the church. He was the person assigned to take me around when I needed somewhere. And he had this little Mercury Sable. And sharp little car, And I said, hey, my daughter turned 16. She's looking for a car. Do you like this Sable? He said, yeah, I'm good. He said, it's been a lemon. I've replaced everything on it. My mechanic said, I've replaced everything you can replace on that car. He said, that thing ought to run for 4,000 years now, So he said, it was a lemon, but we think we, squeezed the juice out of it, and it's fine now. Bottom line is, he drove it down here to Mississippi. He was coming anyway, and my daughter bought it and drove it. It was her first car. Who cares? Well,
yeah, that's what I want to know. You know what? Good question, Ken. I'm just going to drink to congratulate you for wondering why that was the story that you told.
This guy, I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I work for, I forget the name of the company. He said, but we manufacture parachutes that are designed to go into hostile environments like Venus. I said, really? He said, yeah, when they send space probes up, they want to drop this thing off into the planet's atmosphere. Well, it has to have a parachute to slow it down. But the gases that it's going through are caustic, and they eat up the material. What we do is we run all the math on how big is this planet, how much gravity does it have, how fast is this thing going to fall, and how thick is the atmosphere, and blah blah blah. Run all the numbers on it, and we calculate how big our parachute has to be and what kind of material it has to be made out of to survive long enough to slow our thing down so it doesn't break when it hits the ground. We count on the parachute dissolving as it goes through this gas, because it's going to dissolve. The chlorine and stuff just dissolves the parachute. But if it'll last, for 37 seconds, it's got, that's long enough. And they build the parachutes in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Great.
He said, I work for the company that designs them. Who cares? Well, the point is, it's been long known that these planets have very different atmospheres and have very different makeup. Something is very different.
That all was just to say planets have different atmospheres? I'm taking a drink. Okay. My goodness. So
I don't know, Kent. I'm not convinced. I don't think you proved it yet.
Earth is of the terrestrial planets. We've already covered why the outer planets have a lot of hydrogen and helium. So what we're really concerned with is atmospheres in the inner solar system. Okay, so Earth is the odd one out, and it's almost entirely because of life, right? Life actually does stuff like cause a nitrogen cycle and an oxygen cycle that other planets just don't have, right? So that's why Earth is a weird nitrogen-oxygen mix with only a little bit of carbon dioxide. Because actually, as it turns out, a lot of the carbon dioxide gets eaten by plants and turned into plant, rather than just being in the atmosphere. But if you were to, say, not have that, then the Earth's atmosphere would probably be almost all carbon dioxide, just like the atmospheres of Mars and Venus. Now, why does Venus have sulfuric acid clouds? Because it's really hot and very volcanic, so there's a lot of sulfur compounds coming out into the atmosphere and staying up there because it's so hot so that they can stay gaseous. I mean, that's it. That sums it up. What? I feel like that's not exactly like the question of the century. But okay.
Well, I heard, I don't know, I haven't documented this. Maybe somebody can do it for me. But I was told that when they brought back moon rocks, they analyzed them and said they're 30% silica, like the beach at the Pensacola Beach, you know, the sand.
I have no idea if that's true, but I mean, silica is one of the most common things that the crust of the Earth and the moon is made of. So, like, that wouldn't exactly be shocking to me. But, I mean, okay.
And then they said it appears like the moon, you know, silica is highly reflective.
I mean, not always. Take a look at, like, obsidian. I mean, yeah, it can be highly glossy, but it's very, very black. And
Very black.
yeah, most rocks that you find on Earth, including the dark ones, have silica in them. And silica isn't just bright. It's not titanium oxide or something.
That it appears that the moon was designed to be a reflector.
Okay. Okay, hold up. I'm going to take a drink. We're going to take a drink, and we're going to do a little exercise in what's called Google Foo. So we're going to go albedo of the moon. Now, albedo is just a measurement of how much light reflects off of a surface, right? So if I shine a light beam on the surface, how much of it is going to reflect off versus how much is going to be absorbed? Lunar albedo is about 0.12, which means that it absorbs 88% of the light that falls on it. So let's see. Let's see some substances that have a similar albedo.
I know of something that's actually brighter than the moon.
Oh?
It's the dark chalkboards that they used to do in schools before they did the whiteboards. I don't know what they do anymore. I think you just go to school at home through your internet,
Well,
right?
Here's an interesting one.
But yeah, the moon is darker than a chalkboard.
You know what has the exact same typical albedo as the moon?
What's that?
Old blacktop. The stuff they pave roads. You know, the black thing that they make roads out of?
Just like the blackboards were black? Yeah.
Yeah. If you were to take a chunk of moon rock and look at it under, like, you know, noonday conditions on Earth, you would call it black. It's hard to imagine to me that something that absorbs 88% of the light that falls on it was designed for reflecting light.
And a good thing, too, because if it reflected a lot more, it'd be way too bright to look at.
I mean,
just like the sun.
Sure, but like if you're going to call it purpose-made for reflection, like even snow, which isn't actually perfect made for reflection, isn't even at 0.9. It's still at 0.8. So, yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and say that something that's about the same reflectivity as blacktop, which we call black for a reason, not exactly designed for reflection.
I could have told him that.
No, you couldn't, Kent.
Exactly
You don't
correct.
even know what albedo is.
The moon was designed to be a reflector. It's highly... Anyway, the point is, the planets are different material. Now, if they all came from the same dot...
There wasn't actually a point there.
Yeah, no, there was... It was just... I think the moon is shiny, therefore God. And the actual matter of the fact is, it's actually not very shiny. Just the sun is very, very bright. That's it.
I guess that's an implied point that he made, but... yeah.
Don't you think there'd be a little more consistency in what they are made of?
No. No, because we have things like a gravity gradient, which causes essentially a density gradient, and we have good reasons why their atmosphere should differ.
Why aren't they all similar?
I mean, they are.
Some galaxies are spinning backwards. This becomes a real serious problem for evolutionists.
No.
CNN ran an article in 2002. Goofy galaxy spins in wrong direction.
Ooh, CNN.
It's known they should all spin
the
the same
leaders
way,
in
but
astrophysical research, CNN.
So there's actually no particular reason why all galaxies should have a preferred spin direction. And here's why. Even within, like, let's say you have the galaxy as is, right? So you have this total angular momentum in this. But within it can be things like gas clouds, who for whatever reason, maybe a flyby of something with significant gravity like a star or something, end up picking up a retrograde spin. And the same thing could happen to the much, much more immense clouds of dust and gas that formed the first galaxies. Also, galaxies can collide with each other and come out of that with crazy spins. So, yeah.
Here we got problems I think there's serious problems for the Big Bang Theory. Some
There's
planets
no problem
spin backwards. Some
that
moons
galaxies
spin
are
backwards.
oriented
3
in
planets have
seemingly random directions.
And of the things that he's said, only the galaxies would actually even be related to the Big Bang Theory. He's, again, I'm just going to take another drink for conflating the Big Bang Theory and the nebular hypothesis. Because
He's getting closer, but yeah.
moons go in both directions. Some whole galaxies spin backwards. The planets are made of
doesn't
different
even make
materials.
sense.
Yeah,
What does it even mean for a galaxy to spin backwards?
Oh, it spins in the opposite direction to what most other galaxies do.
What does that even mean? That I still don't understand. How do you know you're looking at a galaxy from the top down or the bottom up or whatever? Like,
basically, it means that the North Pole of our galaxy is more close in direction to their South Pole, which isn't a problem. Galaxies have lots of directions.
yeah, galaxies don't spin backwards. They just are oriented in whatever direction and they spin.
Yeah. It's
right? Like,
it's basically the same thing as spinning upside down relative to us. And when you look out into the galaxy, into the universe, the orientation of galaxies is basically random. There isn't actually a very strong preferred direction.
you can go in a game / simulation that some people may have heard of called Universe Sandbox. That's never been mentioned before on this channel, I swear. And you can actually simulate, I think you could simulate the formation of galaxies.
I don't
But
know.
I could be wrong. But
I know you can simulate the collision of galaxies.
there's a lot of things that interact and they can cause a lot of what? It's like you were describing with angular momentum. You know, the system will have essentially the same angular momentum, but it can be exchanged throughout different different bodies that interact in that system.
Yep.
But the sum of it, all of it will stay constant.
Right.
If I understand correctly.
That is accurate.
Same 98 elements, but the concentration of elements is vastly different. How could this happen from a common Big Bang?
Gravity. And it's a nebular hypothesis again, so I'm just going to take another drink.
What's a common Big Bang? What is that?
The professor said
it's the opposite of an unusual or rare Big Bang. Now, don't get me started on the legendary Big Bangs. That's really what you want to get. You want to get that amber-colored Big Bang. Forget all this really gray and green and blue Big Bang. No. Get that amber-colored Big Bang.
I don't know. How do you think it happened? Of course, I was hoping he was going to ask that. You know.
Oh, we're back to
sir,
conversation
it's very
that didn't
simple.
happen.
You see,
I forgot
in the
about
beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And God did it that way on purpose just to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid.
So God did things to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid that don't make the Big Bang Theory look stupid.
But they make Kent look stupid.
They make the God Kent believes in look stupid at that point.
Yeah, but that makes them make Kent look stupid.
Yeah. So, good job.
Maybe
Kent.
that was God's plan all along, to make Kent look stupid.
The whole universe has been trending towards this one moment when Kent looks really dumb, and then there's God just giving a nice big belly laugh.
And it is. It's stupid for multiple reasons, okay? Scientifically, just simply cognitively, you can't even imagine such a thing, okay? It has even conceptual problems. You can't
I love
even
how Kent
conceive
just likes to admit how stupid he is.
Right. Oh, my straw man is really stupid. It's like, yes, Kent.
Listen,
We know.
I wonder if Kent didn't have a huge, he's got a lot of propaganda or whatever you want to call it. He's got an agenda, right? If he decided to actually look up any of this stuff on Google and instead of searching on like creationscience.com search bar, Wikipedia can be usually reliable, not always, there can be mistakes in it. Sometimes there's some pretty complex stuff on there, but there is a simple .wikipedia whatever it is that you could use. This is for Kent if he's listening.
Right.
Just go to that one.
The big words are too much.
I know you think it's Wikipedia or whatever it is, but listen, if you want to pretend like you're gonna understand an actual thing, do real research on it.
Yeah. I mean, look, the albedo of the moon took like one Google search, and it was the top result was 0.12.
You know how many times I've heard that the moon is like darker than a blackboard just by going on YouTube and watching like, I don't know, I feel like many of the science channels I watch have mentioned that. PBS Space Time probably mentioned it.
Yeah.
Physics Girl probably mentioned it. Veritasium, these also, they probably mentioned it.
Dapper Dino probably mentioned it.
Dapper Dinos mentioned it.
The
Who
channel
else?
you're on.
Who else in this chat has channels that they stream to and do science stuff, right?
We'll let them answer, but we'll play some more.
You guys know.
You can't even think
Some of
about
you
how this
already
could
knew
happen.
that.
The Bible, I say, teaches the Big Bang. In 2 Peter 3,
Oh,
it says, the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. In the original Greek, that's a Big Bang.
No, if it were a Big Bang, they would have called it Big Bang in the Greek. I'm sure Greek has a word for bang.
So somebody says, do you believe in the Big Bang? I say, oh, yeah, you better get
I mean,
saved and
great
get ready for
and
it.
big and
the
bang
Big Bang
and
is
noise,
coming
sure.
soon to a city near you.
There's a joke that didn't land.
People say, do you believe in global warming? Oh, yeah, Revelation says they were scorched with a fervent heat. There's going to be global warming. Yep, coming soon. You better get saved and get ready for that.
No, Kent, it was already in progress when you made this video, and I'm taking a drink for
Hold
global
on a
warming
second.
denialism.
Did he just say that Revelation teaches that there will be global warming?
Yeah,
But
when
he
God
doesn't believe in
destroys-
global warming?
When God destroys the world in fire.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So he okay.
Because remember,
So
God
he's
promised not to flood
misrepresented
the
what the
world.
Bible says again.
God promised not to flood the world, but he didn't promise not to burn the world.
Oh yeah, Logic's probably mentioned it. Yeah.
By the way, if the Big Bang Theory is true, would there be any purpose for God to send his son to die for a world that evolved here by chance and came from a Big Bang?
Oh, I have one. Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Because according to, and I'm not going to get deep into Christianity, but essentially mankind's sin that separates them from God still needs to be paid for, and Jesus volunteered for that. So that has nothing to do with the Big Bang
Yeah.
at all. So you can believe it on faith or not. If you don't, you shouldn't believe it scientifically because it's not a scientific claim. And the Big Bang, whether it happened or not, is completely irrelevant to the idea that Christ died for our sins.
I would tend to agree. Although I'm not supporting Christianity per se, I just noticed that a lot of Christians don't feel the need to deny reality, like science, in order to be Christians. So there you go.
Where does the death of Christ fit into this? Well, there are many evolutionists who know full well
About
that the death of Christ is
13.78 billion years after the Big Bang on Earth. That's where and when.
unnecessary.
Why would it be unnecessary?
And I mean, if the Big Bang Theory is true, and that's one of the purposes of this evolution theory, is to eliminate the need for salvation.
No, it's not. Take a drink.
Think
It's
about
not
it.
even
If
addressed. I'm just
evolution
going to
is
take a
true,
drink.
what do we need to be saved from?
The same thing
Also
as
that-
always. You're
Also, that
alleged
graphic he
sins.
had up there is another example of him. He only had it up briefly, but it basically demonstrates how he doesn't understand gravity. Everything should be evenly dispersed, and there shouldn't be any lumps. Well, gravity would cause things to lump together, Kent.
Yeah.
The devotion my son gave the other day was really, that's some good thoughts in there, you know. Salvation from what? What is sin?
Okay, so I'm not going to go into a whole in-depth thing, but there are a lot of definitions of sin that crop up in Abrahamic religions. So you're probably going to want to use a Christian one, but let's just assume that for the sake of argument that God exists, and one of these Christian definitions is anything that moves you away from communion with God. Well, it doesn't depend on Adam, a literal Adam. It doesn't depend on a literal fall. Any of that stuff. If that's a valid definition for sin, well, there you go. If you ever do something that takes you away from God, you're sinning. Do you need help with that? According to Christianity, yes. Problem solved. It actually doesn't take a whole lot of, like, theological maneuvering.
I mean, if evolution's true, what is sin? There is no such thing as sin.
No. Take a drink. I'm
Saved
just
from
gonna take a
what?
drink.
When I was lifeguard,
That makes
you know,
no sense.
we had a camp one time, a Salvation Army camp, where I was the lifeguard at for 2 summers. And there are all these campers, kids. I think they had 300 kids at a time or something at this camp. Well, one time,
The fact that Kent Hovind was once a lifeguard disturbs me, and okay, so I try not to bring this up every time, but it comes up a lot. A little boy drowned at Kent Hovind's cult compound not that long ago. Like, I don't even think it was a full year ago. I'm not sure, though. So, now this was before, or sorry, that happened long after this video was recorded, so the irony didn't exist at the time, but now in retrospect, it's really, really disturbing that Kent Hovind had a little kid drowned on his property, and also was a former lifeguard, and, you know, presumably would have understood things like the importance of having lifeguards. Good thing those families sign a liability waiver before they come in and know that they're entering Dinosaur Adventureland at their own risk.
a whole bunch of little black kids came, all 8, 9, 10-year-olds. You know, the whole camp was swarming with these little black kids. We had a blast.
Oh, my
I love
goodness.
that. And I was teaching the kids how to do a flip off the diving board. You know, so these kids are all lined up, and I do the flip, you know, tuck in tight, and, you know, all this kind of stuff, bounce, lean forward. Well, this one little kid,
By the way, lifeguards aren't supposed to be in the pool teaching you how to dive. They're supposed to be watching you in case you start drowning.
Or saving your life.
Well, right. So, Kent Hovind is, if this story is true, and it doesn't sound obviously false, but if this story is true, that means that Kent Hovind was a negligent lifeguard. And if any kids had drowned, it would be reasonable to hold him as, like, liable for negligent homicide. It's your job to watch the kids and not be in the pool playing with them. Have someone else be on duty if you're going to teach them how to do a flip. Or have someone else teach them a flip while you're on duty as lifeguard.
jumped off the diving board and did a nice flip. And he comes up in the, you know, pool, and he's smiling, laughing around, you know, big old white teeth showing every place. He's looking around, you know.
Did he really have to go to the big old white? I'm just taking a drink for just casual racial stereotypes. Oh my goodness. Why? Ugh.
You know, smiling, splashing, and he went back down. He came up again, he's smiling, looking around, and the kid said, "Hey, get him out of there. It's my turn to dive." I said, "Sammy, get out of there. The next kid wants to dive. Move over." He smiled, looked around, went back down. One of the kids in the line says, "Is that Sammy? He can't swim. What's he doing in the deep end?" You know? He came up the third time. He's smiling, looking around, splashing like mad. I said, "Sammy, are you drowning?" So I jumped in and grabbed him and pulled him out.
You're also supposed to be trained as a lifeguard to recognize when someone's drowning. And the thing is, it doesn't actually tend to look the way that most people think it's going to look, like screaming and flailing. So it's not actually all that easy to recognize if you don't actually have proper training. And I don't really have proper training, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But yeah, lifeguards also shouldn't be asking the drowning victim if they're drowning. They should be recognizing it and jumping in. So, I don't know. Going to take a drink for gross incompetence and endangering human life through negligence, I guess. That's not really a drink trigger, but I feel like I have to drink for it. Because otherwise, my head might explode.
See,
it's also a joke,
He apparently didn't realize he needed to be saved. Right?
Then why did he nod at you when you asked him he was drowning, Kent? Get your story straight. This story would have actually worked if you were like, "Oh, my lifeguard training kicked in and I realized that he was actually drowning. But you see, he didn't realize it, which is why he kept smiling. So I dove in there and saved him." That's how you tell the story, Kent. I know you don't care about honesty, and the fact that this story makes you look bad makes me think it's actually a true story. But, like, just basic rhetoric. Don't make the person saving the drowning kid look like a moron. And that's you, Kent.
One preacher was walking out of the barber shop one time, and one of the local skeptics in town hollered across the street, said, "Hey, preacher, you trying to get people saved?" He said, "No, I'm trying to get people lost." If you get them to realize they're lost, the rest is easy. Nathan, did you call the doctor today? Why not?
Didn't realize I needed to.
Didn't realize you needed to. You don't feel sick, right? Now, if you wake up tomorrow morning and your blood's pouring out your ear and your pillow is soaked in blood, you're probably going to think, you know, this is not right. I probably should have this looked at. You know, I think I better call somebody who might know what this problem is, okay? You first have to realize there's a problem before you're even going to call for the doctor. And you have to think you're drowning before you call for the lifeguard. And you're going to have to realize you're lost before you're going to call for the Savior.
No, lifeguards should not wait for you to call for them. Because, as we can see here from Emotionally Mimetic Psychopath, when I almost drowned, I thrashed around silently, and the lifeguard recognized my flailing around as desperation. Yeah. I don't know if it's the Salvation Army just didn't train their lifeguard, or Kemp didn't pay attention, or what, but it's a little disturbing, but also completely unsurprising that when Kent Hovind was a lifeguard, he was completely incompetent at it, apparently, by his own story.
Yeah, watching someone like drowning and then someone telling you he can't swim, you probably should do something about it right away.
Yeah.
And not just ask him, oh, he didn't answer, he went down again, I'll just wait for him to come back up and ask him again.
That's why I like Ray Comfort's approach on soul winning. It's classic, you know, get them lost. Show them the law. Oh, yeah, the law is a schoolmaster to bring us to Christ.
I actually have trouble with the idea that anyone actually has fallen for Ray Comfort's ridiculous tactics and then become a Christian.
Seems like the stupidest tactic.
Yeah.
This is Kent we're talking about.
Yes, Maddie, we have mentioned that a child has actually drowned and died on his property. Yeah, that did come up right at the beginning of Kent talking about being a lifeguard.
Yes, you're a good person. Oh, yeah, I'm a good person. You ever lied? Well, yeah. What's that make you? Well, a liar.
No. When someone is a liar, it means it's someone who habitually and frequently lies. If you have told
I think if you've lied, it makes you a person.
Right. If you have lied in your life and like you can't remember the last time you lied and you don't tend to lie about things, that makes you not a liar, right? It's sort of like saying that someone who cooks a meal once a day, or not even once, like once a week, is now a chef. Because what do chefs do? Oh, they cook meals. I guess you cook. No. A liar, to be a liar, it has to be a regular part of your behavior. You have to frequently lie. Now, there are plenty of liars out there, but most people who have told a lie are not that. CRISPR-Cas9 says, but the banana is the perfect shape for places. Well, we'll let TJ tell us all about that. And if you don't get that one, good.
Have you ever stolen anything? Well, yeah. What's that make you? Well, it wasn't
Have you
big.
ever stolen
You're a
$100 and
thief.
something
Okay.
$1,000? Oh wait, that's something else.
Yeah, so I just want to point out, Kent Hovind stole about $133,000 from his ex, Cindy Lincoln. So I guess Kent's a thief. Also, there's now, as has come out, audio recordings of him telling a former member of the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland that he's going to be kicked off the property and let go, I guess, at a bus stop with $2,500. And instead, he was given $400. So I'm going to count that as him stealing $2,100 from a former staff member, I guess, at Dinosaur Adventureland. So there you go.
You ever lusted? Yeah. Well, the Bible says, you know, if you even lust, you're an adulterer at heart. You ever hated anybody? Yeah. The Bible says if you hate somebody, it's like murder.
All right, I'm going to start
Are
skipping
you a
ahead
good
a little
person?
bit.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
a good
really
person.
care.
You already told me you're a
How come I
lion,
can't-
thief, and adulterer, and who was it?
There we go.
Kent's never done any
famous
of
sermon
this.
in Connecticut. I stood on the spot where he preached it. You know, sinners in the hand. Okay, so we stopped there and looked at that thing. Jonathan Edwards. There were dozens of people praying round the clock for Jonathan Edwards. He read the entire sermon. He had glasses about that thick, okay? Real sinners in the hands of gripping the pews, ready and anxious to throw you into the fire. He while screaming and crying, I've got to get... It's useless if the Big Bang Theory is true.
Okay,
Why?
maybe we're going to get back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Evolution says that God gave us these rules later on once we were already evolved.
Good
If God
question.
introduced the rules later after we evolved,
Do this, don't do that.
First of all, I would say that's not what the Bible teaches. Secondly, there's no scientific evidence for evolution anyway, so why?
Oof. Gary DeVere says, didn't his son steal millions from Kent? The answer is kind of. So when Kent went to jail prison the first time, I have to say the first time because now he's headed back to be incarcerated for domestic violence. Yeah, by the way. Disturbingly, for much less time than he was away for just taking some money out of the pockets of the government. I think of that as much less of a crime than putting your ex in the hospital, but apparently the courts disagree with me. But anyway, his son Eric was basically put in charge of his entire ministry. And he had basically full legal authority over all of it. And so he started up his own ministry that was completely under his name, Eric Hovind, and he sold all of the holdings of Kent Hovind's ministries to Eric Hovind's ministry for pennies on the dollar. So was it stealing? Not legally. I mean, morally, you might find some problem there. Kent certainly finds some problem there. Kent tried to sue Eric in a private sovereign citizen court, which Eric then just ignored, as you should. So, yeah.
Why would we compromise a good Bible with a dumb theory? That's what I would tell them. There are lots of folks who believe, that like Hugh Ross and these guys, and it's amazing how many theistic evolutionists are very popular in the news,
I'm going to drink for calling Hugh Ross a theistic evolutionist. He's an old Earth creationist and is an anti-evolutionist.
And on Christian TV programs. There are some who would say, God, there are some who say that God evolved.
I don't know of any Christian thinkers who think that. Not one. At least in mainstream Christianity. You probably would find that in Mormonism, but that's the only version of Christianity that I can think of that would come even close to thinking that. So,
I've never heard that phrase before.
Yeah. I'm gonna take
someone believes God evolved. I've never heard anyone say that.
Nor I.
Here's another bigger picture to think about. If the Big Bang Theory and evolution is true, then man created God instead of God created man.
Why? Because you've seen Jurassic Park? Like, I don't get it.
I forgot about that line. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. And also emotionally mimetic psychopath, which, by the way, that's a really long name. I might just shorten it to emotionally. Sorry, man. Or woman. I don't know. EMP. Ooh, that's a good one. I like that EMP. Anyway, says, I find it ironic that Kent would be the sort of guy who says atheists have no reason to avoid beating their significant others. Yeah, he is the kind of person who would say that. I think it's projection. Because it's now... I no longer have to say that Kent is an alleged domestic abuser. He's now a convicted domestic abuser. And apparently there wasn't even a real trial. It looks like it was a plea bargain. I can't actually tell for certain because that doesn't really come up on the trial paperwork or the court paperwork. But there doesn't seem to have been any trial. There's no like transcript of like testimony or anything. So it looks like he just pled guilty. So maybe he pled no contest. I don't know. I don't actually have anything confirming what his what plea he entered. But it looks like it was either no contest or not guilty. And by the way, in case anyone doesn't know, no contest is a plea that means I maintain my innocence, but I recognize that if the state were to prosecute me, I would be convicted. And so to avoid the rigmarole of a trial, which will almost certainly result in my conviction anyway, I will simply accept the conviction, but I still maintain my innocence. It's not a very commonly entered plea, but there you go.
Right? And that's what they teach in sociology class. We used to be hunters and gatherers and slowly got together and built cities, and then they created gods to worship to explain how we got here. Man created God.
I mean, it's pretty hard to argue against the idea that humans at least created some of the God concepts out there because, that's what Kent Hovind thinks. He doesn't think that Odin is real. He thinks that people made up Odin. So,
I know Kent believes in 1 or 3 gods or whatever, but he also knows that there are millions of gods from other religions that in his mind, aren't real. Must have been made by man, right? So I know he already believes that man has made up God or gods. He doesn't think it's true for all of them, but
yeah.
I don't get his point.
Oh, apparently most people call EMP online, so that works. Thanks for getting that one, Ben.
It was a random guess.
Well, you're good at that.
I am, yeah.
I remember one time, you had to guess what we were doing. The game where you shuffle a deck of cards and you hold up one to your forehead with the only other person seeing it, and you guessed what card you were showing immediately with a 1 in 51 chance. So it's pretty good.
Something like that, yeah.
And then we stopped playing because we figured we'd quit while we were ahead.
Bible
Something
says
like
just the
that.
opposite. So anyway, the death of Christ, all of Christianity is useless and unnecessary if Big Bang Theory is true.
Vishanti says, it's pleaded, not pled. You know what? If I want to strengthen plead, I will strengthen it. Because Kent gets to just say, put in a D in drown. And I'm not calling him on it. If he can say drown, are you drowning? I can say pled. Because you know what? I think there should be more strong verbs in English. But you know what? We're actually going to take a quick intermission. I still haven't actually fixed my intermission video, which means, once again, you guys are getting some Power Rangers Battle for the Grid gameplay footage, because I need to work on that. I actually just really need to re-edit it and come up with an extra segment to replace the one that I need to stop using because it's getting copyright claimed every single time. For like 3 weeks, I basically had 1 to 2 copyright claims a day. It was very frustrating. So anyway, we will see you on the other side of about a 3-minute or so intermission.
Time for action.
When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Back to action.
2, 1, fight!
We're not backing down. How can I help you?
Tag team.
Yeah. Not mine. This is gonna hurt.
Zero in on my coordinates.
This time you're mine. Megazord, ready!
Tyrannosaurus.
I am Lord Zed, Emperor of all he sees.
Okay, we are back. So, Give it up for Lord Zed for winning that fight. Good job, buddy. Way to defeat those teenage brats, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So Brian Stephen points out, how many PhDs do you have? Speaking to me, because Dr. Kent Hovind has 3. Well, by Kent Hovind's definition of a doctor's degree, I have 1, and I think
You have a
it's
doctor's degree.
I do have a doctor's degree.
Mhm.
So there you go. And then Silver Harlow points out that if you count traffic tickets, no contest is probably the most common plea. Yeah, I guess that might be that seems reasonable. Although I guess I don't really normally count civil infractions as like crimes because they're technically not. They can result in crimes like contempt of court, like criminal contempt, but I guess that's why I don't really think about them when I think about like pleas being entered, because technically civil infractions like jaywalking or getting a traffic ticket aren't crimes. That's why it doesn't like show up on criminal background checks and whatnot. Science Side Up says, I actually sort of like the gameplay intermission. All right, well, I'll keep that in mind. I mean, it's a fun game, so. Gary DeVere says, that fight was no contest. Lord Zed whooped on those Power Rangers. Yes, he did.
Thanks.
Although, hey, Scorpina and Goldar held their own too.
Now, the Big Bang Theory is a big dud. There's another reason why the Big Bang Theory is not true.
I think that was a joke. I'm just
What
going
do
to
you
drink
mean?
for it.
What does he mean by another reason?
Yeah, it would be
If
nice
he
to
means
get one.
a reason, but yeah.
A reason that isn't just, oh, there's an open question. In the nebular hypothesis, not the Big Bang.
Right?
If the Big Bang Theory were true, the matter would be evenly distributed throughout the universe. It is not.
So actually, that's less clear than you would think. So at certain scales, the matter is extremely lumpy, right? So at like the scale of, say, the solar system or a galaxy, it's extremely lumpy. However, once you go past like supercluster scale, in terms of, megastructures in the universe, it actually may be that the universe at high enough scales is essentially homogeneous, right? Like one big chunk of it is more or less the same as any other big chunk, and there aren't giant like areas with significantly more mass or structures on this kind of scale. Now, we're not sure exactly what scale that would be on, so this is again more of an open question than a problem. But the reason that there's actually the structures that we do see is primarily because of fluctuations in quantum fields. Because you got to remember that the state that a quantum field is going to take at any given time is a stochastic thing, right? It's essentially chance-based. And so at the first instance past t equals 0, there are these fluctuations in various fields being set up that will later on result in, at certain scales, a bumpiness to density. And because density isn't exactly equal everywhere as a result of these quantum fluctuations, you get areas where there's higher and lower density. The higher density areas can collapse into galaxies, and the lower density areas will start to turn into voids as the matter goes from them into the higher density regions. This is actually a prediction of the Big Bang, and you can actually see this sort of lumpiness in these quantum fields if you look at the cosmic microwave background radiation, which has tiny variations in how strong it is in various parts of the sky. This is essentially an echo of this initial variation. And welcome to Tetrapod. Thank you very much, Gary DeVere, for becoming my newest member. I really appreciate that. Guys, if anyone else wants to join, it is $1.99 to start off with. You get access to cool emojis. And Gary DeVere, I have a community post just for patrons, or not patrons, members, where you can request access to the Discord. Alternately, you can shoot me a message on Twitter, or you can send it to my email. If you're already on Discord, you can join the fan Discord and request from there. Just make sure if you send me a request in any of those ways, you let me know who you are on YouTube so I can double check to make sure that you are a member. So I want to say thank you very much. But we're going to hit play on Kent, unfortunately.
I have one thing to ask
Go for
you.
it.
Do you recognize the image, astronomical image, in Kent's little video here?
I actually do
slide.
not. No.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that is the Orion Nebula.
I mean,
And-
that seems possible.
I believe I showed you from, I think it was from the Curiosity box.
It is
There's
the
like,
Orion Nebula, yes.
there are, I think the Curiosity box had 6 imaged star formations that you can actually see on your screen right now, although they're probably really small on your screen if you're watching. Obviously, you are watching. Why would you? Anyway, yeah. But some of those small white dots are stars that are in the process of forming.
Yeah, the thing that
Protoplanetary disks,
the
the
thing
thing
that
that Kent
says
doesn't believe
have,
in.
yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, I might be able to grab that if you want. I could show.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure how I'm going to see it, but we'll figure something out. Oh, you're just going to physically actually grab it. That
Yeah.
works.
Actually, I didn't have to lean back too far, but you can click play if you want, but I'm
Okay.
going to be
Yeah, just
pulling
hold
this up
some
'cause it's
stuff
in here.
up to the camera.
There are big lumps of matter called galaxies and stars, and then there's bazillions of miles of nothing. Think about it. The sun is 880,000 miles in diameter. That's less than 1 million miles in diameter.
Okay.
It is 93 million miles to the sun. So between us and the sun, we got 2 little bitty planets going around, amounting to nearly nothing.
Yep.
93 million miles of radius for this massive sphere of nothing.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know where it is.
more or less.
I don't know where it is.
No, no worries. I mean, yeah, more or less nothing, but I mean, there is also Mercury and Venus in there. Remember your solar system chart, Kent? There are things between the Earth and the Sun.
The matter should be evenly distributed. But this has led the Big Bang theorists to come up with an explanation for why isn't the matter evenly distributed.
Okay, but there's a difference between why the matter isn't evenly distributed on the scale of the solar system and on the scale of the universe, Kent, right? Okay, so I'm going to make like an analogy, right? So let's say you have a block of granite, right? And you're trying to build like a building out of granite blocks, right? Okay, so you need these blocks to be like 2 feet thick, 10 feet wide, 10 feet tall. At that scale, granite is essentially homogeneous, right? Like, it doesn't really matter exactly what's in it. You're going to use the same tools, no matter which part of the granite you're drilling through. You don't really care. Okay, but now let's say you're going to try and carve a little tiny statue out of granite. And it's going to be only like a half a centimeter tall, 50 millimeters tall. That's how tall your statue is going to be. You're going to carve it out of granite. We're going to quickly find out that at the scale of 50 millimeters, granite is no longer homogeneous. It's made of tiny little chunks that are solidified, and each one has its own little shape of crystal, and the chunks individually are much harder than the granite overall. So you're going to actually find that at that scale, it's almost impossible to use as much detail as you would like. Oh, there we go. There's Godzilla. Drink for Godzilla. I have to actually do it. Give me a second. Okay, so you're going to find that, yeah, at 50 millimeters, the granularity of granite is actually an important aspect that you're going to have to take into account if you want to try and carve something at that scale. You're not going to be able to get the same kind of level of detail if, let's say, you're carving like a bust of a person, right? That you could if you were to carve it out of granite at like a 2-foot tall bust. That's because scale matters, right? So at the scale of the whole galaxy, the galaxy is actually not that lumpy, right? It has a few areas where there's density waves and everything, and it gets denser towards the center. But basically that's it. It's a gradient that gets denser towards the center. It's not terribly lumpy at the scale of the whole galaxy. Now, at the scale of the like intragalactic void between nearby galaxies, right? Like from here to Andromeda to the Sombrero galaxy or whatever, space is very, very lumpy again. But like I said earlier, as you keep pulling farther and farther back, eventually you will reach a point where the universe actually doesn't seem very lumpy, and it's like the large block of granite again, where any chunk is just as good as another. It's all a matter of scale. You can also think about it in the fact of like just intermolecular forces and whatnot, right? If you have a big solid chunk of rubber, even at scales of tiny millimeters, that's actually going to be pretty homogeneous. But when you get down to the actual scale of individual atoms, you find out that once again, it's almost all just empty space with tiny little islands of mass and charge.
Lumpiness.
Yep. It's all just a matter of scale. And the scale of the universe at which it's homogeneous and the scales at which is lumpy are perfectly consistent with all the math used to predict outcomes from the Big Bang standard model.
And they will say, well, there's a couple of answers they give to that. Number one, they'll say it is dark matter. You can't see it.
No. Oh my goodness, I'm going to take a drink. If dark matter were also evenly distributed, along with all the other matter being perfectly evenly distributed, because in this case we have like no quantum effects, then you still could have as much dark matter as you want, and you still wouldn't actually get gravitational collapse if everything were completely evenly spaced. The uneven spacing of dark matter is a result of one or both of two things. Either the initial seeding of dark matter was also subject to quantum fluctuations, or it could be that it was simply attracted to the concentrations of normal matter gravitationally, or it could be a bit of both. The reason that we have dark matter in our current cosmological models is because it explains the outsized gravity of galactic scale objects when you measure how much gravity they should have based on their visible matter versus how much they're observed to have when you look at things like the orbital velocity of orbiting dwarf galaxies, or how much lensing is happening from light coming from behind them with gravitational lensing. There's too much in almost every galaxy. Whatever that extra mass is that isn't visible is what we call dark matter. We don't really know what it is. Don't know how it interacts except gravitationally. Don't even know if it interacts with itself. It certainly doesn't seem to interact with the electromagnetic spectrum or normal matter by any kind of electromagnetic or nuclear forces. So it's currently very mysterious, which is why it's called dark matter. But yeah,
And they found galaxies that don't have it.
yes, they have, which is one of the reasons we think that it exists.
Not that many though, as far as I know, but
Very few.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, dark matter has not
maybe
been
not.
proposed as an explanation for the lumpiness of the universe at certain scales.
Oh, okay. Some people say, well, there's antimatter. I mean, you've ever heard of that before? Matter and antimatter.
If Kent Hovind
Kent doesn't believe in anti.
if Kent Hovind denies the existence of antimatter, I'm taking such a big drink.
Nice.
Oh my goodness! Please, Kent, just deny the existence of antimatter, a thing that's routinely.
Have you ever wanted to go back before you heard something so you could hear it again for the first time?
Yes.
Well, this is where you all are right now. So relish this moment as long as you can, because once you go back and replay it, you've already heard it before.
Yeah.
The purpose is to try to explain the missing matter in space, because
No. Oh, that's not exactly my prediction. I'm going to take a drink anyway. Antimatter wasn't proposed to explain the existence of empty places in space. It was proposed because we observed it. Someone was like, hey, what is this thing that has a positive charge equal but opposite in sign to the charge of an electron, and also has all the other properties of an electron, except also opposite spin? Weird. It's like a reverse electron. I guess we'll call it a positron. But then they started finding other things like, oh, hey, look, here's a thing that's exactly like a proton, except once again, reverse spin and charge. I guess we'll call it an antiproton. Oh, look, antimatter. Now we have antimatter.
Do they also have reverse spin?
Yeah, I think so.
You know what's really confusing to me? CPT parity or whatever it's called.
Symmetry, I thought.
Symmetry, yeah. Okay. I don't get it. It's confusing.
Yes.
It's a lot more complex than what Kent thinks about the universe.
Yeah. So,
clearly antimatter is a thing. Clearly.
Right. We observe it daily. Like, you're probably every once in a while getting hit by a positron, because beta plus decay is not a super uncommon form of nuclear decay, and nuclear isotopes are decaying all around you every day. Like, if you turn on a beta detector, which is just a kind of what you might call a Geiger counter, although that's not a term that most professionals use anymore. But anyway, if you turn on a beta detector, you're going to get hits pretty much anywhere you go. And some of those hits are going to be beta plus. Positrons are an everyday thing.
it's not evenly distributed. Or they'll say there are black holes.
I'm just going to take a drink, because again, no one proposed this as a reason why the universe is lumpy. They were proposed because someone... First, let me take that drink. They were proposed because it was noticed that one of the possible solutions for Einstein's field equation resulted in an inescapable area. And actually, that's even not... That was a later proposal that brought back an even older idea that something could be so dense and massive that even light couldn't escape from it, and therefore it would just be a black spot in space where nothing could leave. Okay. And then later, it was found in Einstein's field equations that you could actually solve his field equations to create space-time that was so curved that light couldn't escape from a certain region. And then later, we observed things in astronomy, like stars orbiting quickly around a certain point in space that wasn't emitting any light. And then, very recently, well after this talk was given, we've managed to actually get pictures of the accretion disk of a black hole.
A very large, supermassive black hole. I think M87.
I don't...
Andromeda.
I would have to check. I don't actually know.
And how would you see a black hole?
Well, directly you don't, but like I just went over, you see things like its gravitational effect. The
You could just pull up the image right now
Yeah, I guess. Hold on.
for your video. I mean,
Let's see.
okay. And to be fair, this, like you said, this, this talk was what, 2005? This image is
All right,
from
we're gonna go from the to
couple years ago.
2021. So in 2021, an even better image was taken. Okay.
magnetic fields or something.
So this one is actually significantly higher detail than the first one that you guys might be more familiar with. This was from the Event Horizon Telescope collaboration, which released its first image in 2019, and later this year it released an even more impressive image. So let me just zoom in on it a little bit here, and then we're going to go to my left screen. That's a black hole. That is a photograph, essentially, of a black hole. Oh, Carrie Bronson, member for 6 months, says, I have a coworker who will get angry if you ignore Herr Muller's contribution with the Geiger counter. It's the Geiger-Muller probe or nothing, with a Mothra emoji, and now technically not a super chat, but it is a,
Yeah, I drank for it.
6 months, so we're going to drink for it. Which then also makes me wonder why Carrie Bronson didn't include a Mothra emoji on his first super chat. But thank you very much for being a member for 6 months. We really do appreciate it here. It helps keep the lights on, literally.
And that's good, because otherwise it would be too dark.
Right. So there you go, Kent. That's how you see a black hole. Now, to be fair to him, that image was at least a decade away when he gave this talk, because I can't imagine this talk is from any earlier. Actually, it couldn't even be from 2011 because he was still in jail.
It was 2005.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, see, you can't see them. That proves they're there. Oh, I see.
Ken, it's like saying you can't see the wind, so that proves that they're there. True, you can't technically see the wind, but you can see things blown in the wind. So you can measure the wind.
Just let's understand that Kent Hovind is, without saying it, saying that he doesn't believe in black holes.
Yes.
Or antimatter.
And by his criteria, he shouldn't believe in the wind either, which makes sense since he already doesn't believe in rain. So I think at this point, Kent Hovind just doesn't believe in weather. Maddie, if you're still watching, double check me on that. But what I'm getting from
He's
this
established he doesn't believe in reality, so...
Kent Hovind is like an atmosphere denier at this point. It's like, I mean, it makes sense that he's now a COVID denier, because he started off with denying the atmosphere, apparently. Even though atmospheric pressure is a big part of his talking point about how people live so long. I don't know, Kent. You're not internally consistent. What do you want from me? Oh, the Nova Saber says, wait, he doesn't believe in rain? Yeah, in our last episode, Kent Hovind said
that was 2 episodes ago, I think.
It was either our last one or 2 episodes ago.
I could be wrong.
Kent Hovind said that you can't ever have a cloud condense and then fall and hit you in the face. And it's just like, that's just what rain is. He's denying the existence of rain. I don't know how else to take that other than Kent Hovind is implying that rain can't exist. Yeah, Science Side Up says he has no concept of how atmosphere works. Which, by the way, go subscribe to Science Side Up and go watch like a whole bunch of her live streams, because she is very close to monetization. And Lyric Soren says, thanks for showing me this new black hole image. I hadn't seen it yet, with a Mothra emoji, so we'll take a drink. And you're welcome. I don't know why it wasn't bigger news than it was. I only barely heard about it. I guess it's because it wasn't the first one, but it's such a clear image.
Maddie got it. Maddie got it. That's rain. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what proves they're there? The need for them to be there.
Nope. Actually, nothing about the Big Bang needs black holes to result. Some of our ideas about the evolution of galactic structures use the idea of black holes, but even then, it's actually not really that clear why it is that galaxies tend to have supermassive black holes at the middle. It's just one of those things where it's just like, it seems to be a consistent thing. And also the mass of the black holes tends to be proportional to the mass of the galaxy overall in like a linear proportion when you survey multiple galaxies, which again is one of those weird things that doesn't seem to be predicted by the Big Bang, and we're not sure exactly why that is. It's one of those open questions, but it's not inconsistent with the Big Bang.
The Big Bang theory's got some serious flaws. Since the matter is
Name
not
one.
evenly
Yeah, I would
distributed,
love 'em to.
they're searching desperately for some way to say, well, it's because we can't see it, it's dark matter, antimatter, or matter pops in and out of existence,
He thinks
No,
Black
not
holes?
virtual particles either.
he thinks black holes cause like galactic lumpiness, like there's black holes pulling galaxies apart. Like
I think he does
I don't
think
know.
that.
I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know what Kent thinks. I'm just trying to guess and speculate, and it's not. There's no way I can even get on that level. It's
Yeah.
too dumb for me.
Yeah. And also, he I don't know if you noticed, but he put in virtual particle pairs as a reason for lumpiness, which is actually at least closer, because that involves the actual explanation, which is quantum fluctuations. So I guess it's not right, but at least you're in the right ballpark, Kent. You're in the right field of science. Quantum mechanics.
quarks, and what do they call them? Not gluons, they got another term for it. But all of
No, that gluons are a real thing, Kent. There isn't another term for gluons. I don't. He's not, I guess, wrong. He's just not sure, which I guess I can't drink for because it's fine to not be sure about something. It's just a little crazy to me that he's going to try and dive a little bit into quantum mechanics as he's not even sure if gluons are a real thing.
those,
I got
think
a
are
name
just
for
great.
it. For gluons.
It's gluons or something else.
They're called
Maybe-
gluons. That's the name.
I call them stickyons because I'm Kent, apparently.
I call them the one that isn't fermions.
Well,
But then I
lo-
just call them gluons because it's quick.
But there's lots of things that aren't fermions. That aren't gluons.
Attempt to try to explain the missing matter in space. Big Bang Theory has a good explanation in a book called The Evolution Cruncher.
What?
This is a book we sell. It's 900
Oh.
pages and it's $5.
And I'm
Wow.
sure those pages aren't even barely worth every penny.
It must be good if it's that long and that inexpensive.
Yeah.
Got a chapter on everything. Okay. Fred Hoyle, the famous astronomer from Cambridge University in England, said, I have little hesitation in saying that a sickly pall now hangs over the Big Bang Theory.
Boy, was he wrong. Oh, Robert Madwell has a good one. Attach-ons.
That's
Okay, everybody, if you get to this point in the video, first, thank you very much. Second, hit like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification button so you turn on all notifications so you're always alerted when there's new notifications. But also, in the comments, give me your ideal replacement for the name Gluon that we can send to Kent. I like attach-ons, wax-ons versus wax-offs. Okay. So yeah, put that in the comments because, comments drive views.
That was back in '84. They've known for 20 years the Big Bang Theory has serious, I would say, irreconcilable problems.
But that's
Name
the thing.
one.
Fred Hoyle was an outlier in astronomy back then because okay, I don't think Kent knows this, but I want to inform everyone else, and I'm sure most people here, or at least a lot of people here know this. The reason Fred Hoyle didn't like the Big Bang is because he thought it sounded too much like Genesis. Fred Hoyle didn't like how much it implied a creator to his mind and how much Christians were celebrating the idea that the universe had a beginning. Because here's the thing, right? Theism broadly has always predicted a non-eternal universe, but up until the Big Bang, most atheists were pretty sold on the steady-state universe, that there was some process by which the universe at large scales was essentially one eternal and two more or less the same again at large scales. Obviously, they were changed at small scales. And yeah, there's a reason that it was a Catholic priest who was first like, hey, wait a minute. What if we can wind time back and it turns out that there is a beginning? That'd be cool. And look, the data supports it. So yeah, that's actually one of the instances where, like, Fred Hoyle, not believing in God, although also not believing in evolution, which is a weird one, was like, nope, that's way too Christian sounding. Gotta get Genesis out of your head and get rid of this whole Big Bang idea. Also, he was an anti-evolutionist for some strange reason. It's a very odd person. Although he did give us the nuclear synthesis idea about stellar nuclear synthesis, so good on him for that. But once again, that's an example of why it is that science doesn't really care about who you are, they just care about your work. And Fred Hoyle did good work on nucleosynthesis, and bad work on a lot of other things, including Archaeopteryx.
Some people do good work on some things and bad work on other things. Like Kent does a bad job at like explaining reality, but he does a good job at getting in trouble with the law.
It's true. Yeah, he does. All right, here we go.
Why haven't they thrown it out? They don't have a replacement yet.
It's not just that. It's that none of the things that you brought up have actually been problems, and it continues to make new predictions. So I'm just going to take a drink for Kent not knowing why the Big Bang remains in place.
We're going to keep that guy in jail till we find who did it. That's not science. Get the book, The Evolution Cruncher. Go to page 68. There's a whole bunch on the Big Bang Theory in there.
I actually kind of want that book. I might see if it's available on Amazon and like add it to my Dapper Dino wish list. And, you know,
Only $5, right?
I don't know how much it would be on Amazon. I doubt it's still in print. I probably won't be able to find it.
What was it called?
The Evolution Cruncher.
Now, the second law of thermodynamics tells us everything tends toward disorder.
No, it doesn't. Take a drink.
At least you said 10.
Everything is falling apart. Most of you have a job because of the second law of thermodynamics.
I mean, in that almost everyone is, or no, everyone is even alive because of the second law of thermodynamics. Because here's the thing, right? Life is something that actually increases entropy. Life takes advantage of energy gradients and actually brings them to thermodynamic equilibrium in the environment faster than they would on their own. So, yeah.
You're either fixing something that's broke most of the time, or cleaning something that got dirty, or you are building a new one to replace the one that's too far gone.
None of these necessitate an increase in entropy. None of them.
You can buy it for $14.99 on mass market paperback or $579.95 in paperback.
I'm going to get that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's on Amazon.
if anyone wants me to read that, make sure you super chat. Well, so YouTube is going to take about a third of it. So like super chat like $700 US, and I'll get that. Never mind. I'm kidding. Please don't super chat $700 unless you happen to be like a millionaire. In which case, yeah, go for it.
I mean, if you think about it, probably everybody's job is here because of the second law of thermodynamics. Just about everybody's job. The farmers have to do their work because they got to raise new food because the last food you ate is going to be gone in a few hours and you're going to be hungry again.
That is actually an example of the second law of thermodynamics in operation. And so I'm going to take my first drink of the night for Kent being right. We got through like 3/4 of this episode without Kent getting anything right as far as I can tell. But he got that one right.
It's been a while.
So
it's been a while.
Congrats, Kent. You got this one right. And I am honestly kind of shocked.
He has the Evolution Handbook
The
on his
cleaning lady's got to
website,
come back and clean the place.
but I don't
We got to
see
build a new
Evolution
building every
Cruncher.
50 or 100 years because the older ones are going to wear out and fall apart.
Same author?
You got to buy a new car. You work hard to
don't
earn
think
enough money to buy a new car. Why? Because the last one is worn
Oh
out.
no, because it's by Creation
Gotta buy
Science
it.
Evangelism Inc.
Oh, by the way,
Well, maybe it is. It's 992 pages.
sounds like it
I
might be the
wonder
same
what
one.
page 68 looks like.
By the way, Vishanti says, link me your wish list and I'll send you the mass paperback copy. My wish list is in fact linked in the description. So if anyone ever wants to go to it, you can. There's all sorts of random crap there. Like, it ranges from like a few bucks all the way to like if you want to buy me a new $200 monitor, you can. So yeah, there's even stuff on there that's technically not available just because I put it on there and went out of stock or whatever. But anyway,
New tires, you know. Second law of thermodynamics is just a universal law.
yeah,
First law says matter cannot be created or destroyed. Second law,
it says the total amount of energy in the system cannot increase or in an isolated system cannot increase or decrease. But you know,
law says everything tends toward disorder.
no, let's take a drink. Okay. So the second law of thermodynamics says that in a isolated system, entropy must always increase or stay the same. But entropy is not the same thing as order, right? So we can actually find entropy decreasing events all the time, but we can also find cases in which it doesn't really correspond well to order. Now, I actually had a whole stream, like a whole 2-hour live stream, with a young Earth creationist, Sal Cordova, who actually himself went through the rigmarole of showing why this is a bad argument. And I'm going to give you what he used as one of his first big arguments as to just why intuitively this shouldn't work, once you understand the argument. And his question was, what has more entropy? A living human or a frozen dead rat? Now, according to Kent, with this order, he would probably say the frozen dead rat. But here's the thing. You can actually calculate the basic baseline amount of entropy for water, which is most of what both the rat and the human are made of. And you're going to find that given the amount of mass and the temperature of the water in a human, the human has far more entropy than a frozen rat. And so it does not correlate well to your intuitions. Vishanti says, "Bruh, add the book to your wish list." I'm in the middle of a stream, woman. Give me a few. Let me finish my stream, and then I will add it. Actually, you know what? I think technically you can add it right now, Benz.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right. We're gonna have Bent get on it while I play more Kent Hovind.
Well, no, I just listen. I don't know. Like when you brought up a dead frozen rat or a human, I don't know how to calculate entropy. Like entropy is, I don't think it's necessarily intuitive.
It's
not
not.
for me, at least. But also, you know, like, and you brought up multiple times. What are the units of entropy?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I could say explain for the audience because I don't remember, and I know you've told me multiple times. But
It's joules per Kelvin. It's J, lowercase j divided by uppercase K.
Okay.
So Verlian says, wait, so Kent completely ignore the first law when it comes to his God. I think Kent would say that God isn't bound by the laws of nature, but nature is. So God can do things that nature couldn't. And I mean, that is a pretty important aspect, I think, of most God concepts. So you could argue outside of that how logically coherent that is, but I think that would be his response.
Yeah, there may or may not be the Evolution Cruncher on your wish list now.
There you go.
I think.
Dapper Dino wish list?
I think so.
Okay, well, I'm sure Vishanti will let us know soon.
Well, there's a lot of ways to phrase the second law. I'll give you a couple other ways to phrase it in a second.
Okay.
Hebrews 1 tells us, the heavens are the works of thy hands, they shall perish, they wax old as doth a garment. Everything is wearing out. Take a look at your hairdo when you wake up in the morning. It'll work, okay? Everything is falling apart.
Not if you have scales. Then that isn't a problem.
Nice.
I've often tried to figure this out. Maybe you guys can help me on this. All right, Diane, maybe you can help me. You're a lady here. Why does it take the women an hour of hard work in the morning in order to look natural?
Drink for casual sexism, yay!
Think about it. I want to look natural. Well, then get up and go to work, okay?
What?
That's natural, okay?
That is.
Everything is falling apart, folks. Nothing.
By the way, usually when natural looks are going for, what that usually means is you're going for a look that doesn't look like you're wearing makeup, and it doesn't look like your hair is in a situation that you couldn't be in without heavy chemical treatment. That's what
So
that
you have to
means.
apply a bunch of makeup, but in a very subtle and nuanced way.
It doesn't even always involve a lot of makeup. Sometimes it can just be cover up for a few little blotches here and there.
I don't know. I'm not going to try to get into what Kent's thinking about here because best case scenario, I'm trying to figure out if he's being sexist or not. And
Yeah, Robert Madewell.
I know why he's in jail right now. So
Yeah, and Robert Madewell points out that bedhead is not entropy. No, it's not. It's really, really not. In terms of entropy, your hair has essentially the same entropy no matter what kind of hairdo it's in. It's not going to really... oh, drink for Mothra. Gary DeVere asks a good question. Do you have scales or scutes? The answer is yes. Yes, I do. The Vernal Bead says, so we've had sexism and racism. Will there be homophobia? I mean, Kent is definitely a homophobe, but it doesn't come up every time, so maybe. Silver Harlow says, your feathers never get discombobulated? No, I don't have any. Unless you count my reticulate scales, which are probably actually like stunted feathers, but they don't look feathery, so I don't.
Things getting better by itself. Here's Sue at 20. There she is at 90.
Okay.
And here she is at 3,000. Okay. I mean, everything is falling apart.
Actually, that is an example, at least from Alive to Dead, of the second law, because as you die, you reach thermodynamic equilibrium with the environment, which means that you reach maximum entropy that you can in that environment at that time. So I'll drink again for Kent being right. He found an actual example of the second law in action. EMP says, didn't he imply planets were gay earlier? I don't think so.
Isaac Asimov, a very famous anti-creationist and anti-Christian, he said,
I think he
another
was
way of
actually
stating
a
the second law.
famous author.
Yeah. Now,
I don't know. What was Isaac Asimov
Asimov
famous
had-
for? Was it being a non-Christian or being like a science fiction author?
yeah, it's for being a science fiction author. It was
Okay.
not for... In
Because
fact,
he may or may not have hated Christianity, but that's, I don't think, what he's known for.
no.
That's
In
my
fact,
point.
I've never heard anyone say that one of their big influences in terms of like atheist thought was Isaac Asimov. It's
I
a
just don't know why
weird-
Kent would introduce him that way instead of just calling him the science fiction author
Well, it's the same thing.
Isaac Asimov.
It's the same thing as why lots of people like to emphasize the fact that Stephen Hawking was an atheist. It's like, but like he didn't do anything with that. He wasn't like an activist for atheism. He just believed there wasn't a god, and that's all.
Yeah, one of the least interesting things about Stephen Hawking, for me, subjectively, is his religious views.
Yeah,
I care more about all of the science he did and everything that has been built up from him.
He would agree with you. That's one of the reasons why he didn't talk about his atheism. He was just like, yeah, I'm an atheist. Okay, let's talk about black holes. Because that's interesting. My beliefs about God aren't interesting, which I would agree with. They're much less interesting than his ideas about black holes and quantum physics,
radiation.
and Hawking radiation, whatnot.
He has his own radiation.
Right? I don't have my own.
And it's going to
radiation.
last longer than like everything else, too.
It's true.
Is the universe is constantly getting more disorderly. Viewed that way, we can see the second law all about us. We have to work hard to straighten out a room, but left to itself, it becomes a mess again, very quickly and very easily. Even if we never enter it, it becomes dusty and musty.
Yeah, I'm going to point out that this is Isaac Asimov not really getting the second law right, and in similar ways to what Kent does, because, I mean, he was writing for lay audiences and not being careful, and I don't know that he was an expert in this field. Maybe he was. But if he was, I wouldn't have described it this way. But then again, it's hard to actually describe entropy to a lay audience in a way that's actually accurate and doesn't give them the wrong idea, but that's also like comprehensible, because entropy is weird and crazy.
How difficult to maintain houses and machinery and our own bodies in perfect working order. How easy to let them deteriorate. In fact, all we have to do is nothing. And everything deteriorates, collapses, breaks down, wears out, all by itself. And that is...
Robert Madewell says, Asimov was a secular Jew. I'm almost positive that Kent would count secular Judaism as atheism.
Is what the second law is all about. And he's right. And yet this guy still turns around and believes in evolution.
Yeah.
I just can't comprehend that.
I know you can't, but I don't know why you can't.
Kent is right, though. He can't comprehend that. So we're going to take a drink for Kent being right, because it hasn't happened that much this episode.
This is a thermograph of a building showing where the heat is being lost from.
I mean, technically, yeah, look, it's close enough. I'm not going to nitpick.
You heat up your house, the heat leaves, doesn't it? And you got to pay to heat it again. Or when you cool the house, you got to pay to cool it again.
It's true.
True, I'll take a drink.
That's true. There are heating bills and cooling bills. That's a thing. You may not have known that, but it's true.
It's amazing how much of our budget goes to replacing things, replacing light bulbs, replacing heat, replacing cold air, because of the second law of thermodynamics. But in spite of that, the textbooks still teach, like this one here, humanists probably evolved from bacteria.
Wait, did he say humanists probably evolved
He
from
did.
bacteria?
He did say that.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard too.
But despite that, like, here's something that's not related at all.
I just like it.
No,
He said
I know.
humanists.
Maybe he was trying to make a joke.
I think
Maybe
he just
he
misspoke.
misspoke. I don't know.
Oh man.
Yeah.
True Hell says, to be fair, you talk about Kent's criminal record, so no hard feelings for him talking about atheists as anti-Christian. The difference is that Kent definitely has a criminal record, and also not all atheists. It's also definitely true that not all atheists are anti-Christian. So that's where the difference is. I'm being truthful when I mention Kent Hovind's criminal record. Kent is lying when he conflates anti-Christian ideas with atheism.
I think of it like, yeah, because I feel like you're talking about Asimov there. I mean, we don't really introduce Kent on the show because everyone obviously knows who he is, but how would we introduce him if we did? Young Earth creationism, Kent Hovind, like
I would now lead with convicted domestic abuser and young Earth
yeah,
creationist.
okay. Well, then that is to be fair because I don't lead with that. But like, if I'm talking about Isaac Asimov, I'm not going to lead with some random thing about him. I'm going to lead with science fiction author, or usually I'm talking about people who know who he is. So I'm just going to say his name.
I'll tell you what, though.
So like, that's my issues. Kent's just going to call him.
If Isaac Asimov had been convicted of domestic violence, I might lead with that.
Well, yeah, I guess. But I mean, I don't know. I know of, I think of people in history for what they're most famous for. That's usually how I view people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to call Kent famous or infamous or whatever, but
A little bit of both.
a little bit of both. And he's definitely, we all know who he is, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to call him doctor, but I'm going to just call him Uncle Kent, no relation or something like that, right? Like, that's not an insult or anything.
Yeah.
It's not bashing him or anything. It's just we all know who he is, and if you don't know, I'm not going to introduce someone like that. I mean, I guess it depends, but
Okay, here we go.
just call him Isaac Asimov the author. That's it. That's
More than
all.
4 billion years ago. Here's a question you can ask evolutionists. They say we came from a single-celled creature,
Okay.
like a bacteria.
Mhm.
Where are the two-celled creatures in the world?
Well, first, there are some. Go to Jackson Wheat's channel for information about that, because there are, in fact, some two-celled organisms. But second, two-celled isn't really the next stepping stone to multicellularity.
Diplococcus?
I'm not sure yet.
I mean, look,
I have
I've
looked
seen. Take a microbiology course, right? And you'll see them in microscope. 2 little bacteria, diplo, 2. There's single, and there's multiple, and then there's 2 sometimes.
Oh, and Vishanti
Wow.
makes a point. She says, like convicted sex trafficker R. Kelly. Yeah. There are some things that I think are so important to lead with that they override the thing you got famous for. Sex trafficking is one of them.
Great. My point stands. Isaac
That's fair.
Asimov shouldn't be introduced as an
No, I
atheist
think both myself and Vishanti would.
or whatever.
But yeah. But so the next step
But yeah,
from single-celled
and I
is colonial. which doesn't result except transitively in a two-celled group, right? It then goes to, oh, you got a single cell, but now it can form colonies. So sure, there's like a little bit of time where there's only 2 cells in the colony, but they're rapidly going to grow into hundreds of cells, right? Or at least dozens. So there isn't a step predicted by evolution where you have a stopping point at 2 cells or 3 cells or 4 cells or anything like that. It's single, colonial, and then you start differentiating different colonial cells for different activities within the whole colony, and that's where you start having multicellularity, because now you have specialization and division of labor within the cells. Robert Maywell says tax evader Ken Hovind. I actually usually don't lead with tax evasion even before the domestic abuse conviction, mostly because it's like a white collar crime and I don't really care that much about it, except when he complains about him having to pay taxes. So I only bring it up conditionally, but putting your ex in the hospital is a pretty serious thing to me. So
yeah,
I mean, provided that you weren't actually in danger from your ex, which there's no indication he was, and the judge concurs. So, yeah. And he also doesn't claim to have been in any danger. Like, if she came at him with a knife or a gun or something, and then he threw her to the ground and put her in the hospital, I'd be like, all right, whatever. She came at him with a gun, I don't really care. But that isn't what happened. I'm still getting demonetized.
Did they go straight from one cell to, you know, hundreds of cells together acting as an organism?
No, they went straight from one cell to hundreds of cells acting together as a colony.
Where are the two-celled creatures?
I mean, they're around, but they're really not an intermediary step between single-celled and multicellular life.
Well, there aren't any.
they're everywhere. They're all over.
Wrong. I'm just going to take a drink.
There are some on the screen right now, unless you've like autoclaved your monitor, right? Like they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, Kent knows as much about microbiology as he knows about astronomy, which is to say essentially nothing.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah.
Not only there aren't any fossils of any.
Well, first, I'm actually not so sure about that one. I don't look into microfossils very much, but
No,
I wouldn't be surprised if there were any. But even if there weren't, so what? Oh, Lyric Soren says, for $5, here's for the demonetization, buddy. Thank you very much. Once we started talking about guns and domestic violence and sexual assault and sex trafficking, I'm just like, I give up on this one. John Rapp, I saw that. I wasn't going to read it because it was just going to get me further demonetized. I know you can only get so demonetized, but like, I did tell YouTube that this thing was going to be a relatively clean stream, and I'm becoming a liar.
Nobody's ever found a fossil of a two-celled creature.
You know what? Here's my response to that. It's just citation needed, because I know for a fact that Kent Hovind doesn't read paleontology literature. So, yeah.
Where are they? They don't exist. They never existed.
Even if it's true, the fossil record for single-cell life is particularly poor. We wouldn't really expect to find a whole lot of single-cell and double-cell fossils, because while there are cellular fossils, they're vanishingly rare for a few reasons. One, it's unlikely for a single cell to fossilize in the first place. Very unlikely. And second, most of the period of time when multicellularity was being developed would have been even before times like the Ediacaran, which is before the Cambrian period. We're talking like 6, 7, maybe even 800 million years ago. A lot of that rock is just gone because it's been sublimated and reworked into the mantle. The older you go, the less of that rock is even in existence. Because, plates go under each other. So
It took me a while to type that out and do that, but oh no, that's not what I want.
I don't know what we're talking about.
I'm trying to link an image. It's basically just a Diplococcus, but
Because
made the
it
URL too
didn't
big.
happen. Now, see, that's the logical event, logical sequence to think through this. You'd say, well, We don't find any evidence. There's none alive today. There's no fossils, so it didn't happen. But they
Except that not all of those are true. I don't know if there are fossils, but there are some alive today.
will say, we don't have any evidence. We don't have them today. We don't find any fossils of them because we haven't looked hard enough.
No, I don't think that's what people are saying. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
It's not science.
all right, that is where we're actually going to leave Kent for now. We're almost at that 2-hour mark, which is where I like to start cutting things off. I want to say, first, I want to say a really big thank you to everyone who's watching. Please do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I imagine most of you are subscribers, but whatever. I also want to say a special thank you to Carrie Bronson and Lyric Soren for super chatting, and also for Gary DeVere for becoming our newest member. I think I am 7 members away from a new emoji. So, you know, if you want to see more emojis and you want to be able to use them, feel free. Join the channel. Let's see. I'll give some channel news, but first, Bent, is there anything that you want to plug?
No,
Okay.
nothing.
I will say this. I did earlier encourage everyone to subscribe to Science Side Up because she is close to getting her monetization watch hours. So you don't just subscribe, watch some videos. But I also believe that she is going to be streaming tomorrow, and there is a fair chance that I will be there. Oh, and for $5 reduce from John Rath, Kent now has a month to experience Jeebus in him and Bubba. Sorry, Dapper, one of my voices is evil. Yes. Thank you for further demonetizing me by also paying $5 reduce. Appreciated. So you might be able to check for me on that day. Now I need to pull up a calendar so I make sure I'm getting all this stuff right. So give me a second, guys. Okay, so on Thursday, the next speculative evolution video should be out. It is currently scheduled. Then on Saturday, I am going to be interviewing Dr. Josh Bowen from Digital Hammurabi, or Hammurabi? Whatever, Hammurabi. I'm going to go with Hammurabi, about Mesopotamian languages. We are not actually going to be talking about the Old Testament as our topic, because that is what every interview with Josh or Dr. Josh is about. So I'm going to mix it up, and we're actually going to talk about things like Sumerian grammar, the sort of Mesopotamian Sprachbund, diachronic developments in Sumerian and Akkadian, the extinction of Sumerian, things like that. It's going to be extremely nerdy, and there's going to be a lot of grammar. So then let's see. Monday, the 4th, there's going to be a debate here on the channel. Finding Truth versus Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal. They're going to be debating, can evolution produce novel features in organisms? And there will probably be an after show for that too. Then the next Tuesday will be another Kent with Bent. I am not sure what's happening Thursday or that Saturday, but I will say that the following week, Bent and I will be away. We're taking a trip with some fellow other YouTube/internet friends to the Grand Canyon, and there will be a pre-recorded Kent with Bent, and I will get with Erica about whether or not she wants to do an Eric with Erica on the 19th or something. Maybe not, maybe. So yeah, I just want to point out that we will not be around for that week. So if you're trying to get interviews with me or trying to email me about stuff, I'm basically taking the week off. There's already videos lined up for both Tuesday and Thursday, so don't worry about it. There will be content. Then I am probably going to be having on the 30th, another Leaving Young Earth Creationism, and that's as far ahead as I can see. So there you go. And with that, I'm going to say once again, thank you very much. And I will leave you with my end credits. Bye, everybody. I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovend, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Res Instance. My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked to the description, And if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe because every like and subscription really helps the video out. Thank you.